ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. Romania's political landscape has been rocked by a surprise presidential election result, with hard-right NATO critic Georgescu unexpectedly leading the first round. Georgescu will face center-right reformist Elena Lasconi in a runoff that could reshape Romania's pro-Western stance. His meteoric rise raises questions about voter discontent, TikTok-driven campaigns, and the future of Romania's alliances. Now, joining us today on TVP World to explore these dynamics is Stefan Popescu, former State Secretary at Romania's Foreign Ministry. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
Now, before we dive into the topic of this presidential election, I've heard that some people have been coming out on the streets in protest there in Romania. Do you know what's going on over there?
Yes, there are a few hundreds of students protesting in the center of Bucharest, but I don't see any important protest in the major cities of Romania.
Right. So coming back to the topic, this is quite an unexpected result, I think, when we look at the polling numbers. Before the election actually took place, a lot of the polling numbers that we are taking into account didn't even have the name of this particular candidate on its research. What happened there? What does Georgescu's unexpected success tell us about some changing priorities when it comes to Romanian voters?
There is an immediate cause and the background cause to explain the results of these elections. The immediate cause is the way in which the mainstream political parties understood how to conduct their electoral campaign for these presidential elections. There were no debates. There were no meetings with voters, as usually happens in a campaign. The major parties prefer to finance television stations that organize fake dialogues with the candidates of the Social Democratic Party or National Liberal Party. In other words, in this electoral campaign, many Romanians were ignored. Then everyone agrees that we are facing the weakest candidates in Romania's post-communist history. And this has generated a lot of frustration among the population, either candidates with problems in their CVs or from the point of view of integrity. The case of the Social Democratic candidate, the Prime Minister Marcel Ciolacu, who traveled on a private jet to Monaco and Madrid, paid by a company that was later investigated for dubious real estate deals. And there is a chronic distrust of Romanian voters in the offer of candidates and political parties. So the vote for Mr. Călin Georgescu was not necessarily for his ideas, but because people saw independent candidate written next to his name. It is therefore a protest vote. People feel disappointed with the quality of life, the lack of highways, the problems in hospitals and education, the dysfunctional justice. Every year, tens of thousands of Romanians, you must look to the statistics, continue to leave the country. In contrast, traditional political parties and candidates seem disconnected from the real problems of the citizens, lack of meritocracy. There is a general impression that politicians appoint their mistresses, relatives, and close associates to the state apparatus or favor companies run by relatives or close associates in contracts with the state. Even the Alliance for the Unification of Romanians, it's a party that claimed to be pro-sovereign and anti-system, has suffered from the simple fact that is a political party and from the distrust shown by Romanians in political parties. So against this background, the recipe for success of Mr. Georgescu, the candidate ranked first, should not be surprising. His program is simple, easy to understand for all Romanians regardless of their education, food, water, energy, the valorization of internal resources, the need to make Romania a country that matters, and many reference to the Orthodox religion, of course, to which many Romanians are sensitive, and of course, the Romanians' fear of war.
Right. So a lot of the mainstream media within or outside of Romania is trying to paint it as TikTok campaigning or a success of social media campaigning. Do you think that has to do with the fact that, well, at least the candidate is trying to reach out to all different sorts of demographic, and instead of perhaps isolating themselves within, like you mentioned, perhaps the more traditional media circle?
You know, the authorities' poor communication during the coronavirus pandemic has led some of the population to turn to alternative channels, such TikTok, Telegram. There are almost 9 million TikTok accounts in Romania today. In other words, the lack of trust in the mass media and official communication channels has led to the development of underground communication channels that have been completely ignored by parties and candidates, but exploited by Mr. Georgescu's campaign team. I don't know if Mr. Georgescu's campaign was held by Russia or not. The problem, I think, the fundamental problem is why Romanians were receptive to this campaign, to these messages. And here I think the responsibility lies with the political class and the traditional media, which no longer have credibility. It is, so I repeat, it is possible that there were intelligence structures behind Mr. Georgescu's campaign, even without his knowledge, but we cannot speculate. The president of Romania stated that he did not receive any warnings from the Romanian intelligence service. But the underlying issue is why Romanians were receptive to his message. Here is the real question. There is a deep disappointment in the political class, in the way in which President Iohannis for 10 years understood to exercise his presidential function. He did not organize, you are a journalist, a single press conference in 10 years. He was distant from the people, sometimes contemptuous, very often on very expensive holidays paid by taxpayers, without any empathy for the people. So Romanians, you know, call him the closet or the robot.
Right, and very quickly, we have a little bit of time, and I'm wondering if there's anything that these mainstream parties can do to earn back the trust of the Romanian people at this point.
I don't know, but it is likely that Mrs. Lasconi will win these elections. Most Romanians understand the stakes of these elections, but Mrs. Lasconi, the pro-European candidate, has also serious competence problems. Former Romanian President Traian Băsescu, a strong supporter of Mrs. Lasconi, recommended in a public speech that she prepare herself, read about the role of the president, about the function of the European Union, to read history. And it is unusual for a candidate, you know, who has reached the finals of the elections, is to have foreign policy gaps, to not know how many NATO troops are in Romania. So people are thinking about how she will represent us, what exactly she will discuss when she will be without advisor or without translators with her counterparts. But even so, there is no other option than to vote Mr. Lasconi, and the people is aware.
All right. Thank you so much for your input and insight and helping us unpack all of this situation. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being with us on TVP World. Cheers. And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.